Alright, so this is rule number 11, the last rule of all the elementary rules of usage in Elements of Style. Okay, it says a participial phrase at the beginning of a sentence must refer to the grammatical subject, to the subject of the sentence, right? So I want to sort of take a reverse approach here to make sense of this rule, okay? Because what it primarily has to do with, right, at the root of it is sentence combining, okay? Which is something we've worked on a little bit this year. To combine two sentences, you can use a variety of approaches, right? You can, for example, let's look at this. This is two sentences, right? I was young and inexperienced. I thought the task was easy. That's two sentences. If I can say the same information in one sentence, most of the time, that's better writing. Okay, so for example, I could change one of these clauses into a subordinate clause, right? Since I was young and experienced, I thought the task was easy, right? Since I was young and inexperienced, comma, I thought the task was easy. That's the same thing. I'm saying the same thing. I'm just making it one sentence, right? So if I can make it one sentence, most of the time it's going to be better, as long as it's not too complex or too much like a run-on, okay? I could also put a semicolon in between the two clauses, if they're related. In this case, they seem to be closely related. So I could just say, I was young and inexperienced, semicolon, I thought the task was easy, period, right? That's grammatically okay, right? It's actually one sentence if I put the semicolon there, because it's just two independent clauses joined together by a semicolon. I could also join it by putting a conjunction and a comma. I was young and experienced, comma, and I thought the task was easy. There's a variety of ways, okay? One of the ways is to turn one of these clauses into a phrase, specifically a participial phrase, right? It could be a prepositional phrase or an infinitive phrase, but in this case we're dealing with participial phrases, right? So instead of making this its own subordinate clause, I was young and inexperienced, right? I could just write young and inexperienced comma, I thought the task was easy, right? And then I'd have a complete sentence which is shorter than these two sentences, says the same amount of information, okay? But when we combine sentences, often we run the risk of what this is warning against, or a variety of risks, right? So I could want to say, young and inexperienced, the task seemed easy. Okay, so there's something that's wrong with this sentence. Young and inexperienced, the task seemed easy. If you go back up here to the rule, a participial phrase, which this is it, right? And inexperienced would be a past participle, okay? Participial phrase at the beginning of a sentence must refer to the grammatical subject. What's the subject of this whole sentence? Task, right? But the problem is that this looks like it's describing task, right? Because the adjectives here are closest to this, right? So what I need to do is fix this. This is I think they call them, call it a misplaced modifier, right? So the task seemed easy. Well, what I should write is I thought the task seemed easy, okay? So hopefully you see the difference between those two options, okay? This misplaced modifier can happen quite often. I thought the task seemed easy. Okay, that would be the correct way of writing it, right? Some other common mistakes, right? Like you could say, let's see, loaded with tapas, the waiter carried the tray across the room. Okay, do you see the mistake there? Loaded with tapas, the waiter carried the tray across the room. What's loaded with tapas? The tray, but what does it sound like? The waiter, right? Unless he's been, sneaking his own bites here and there, right? We would assume that's incorrectly stated, right? Loaded with tapas, the waiter carried the tray across the room. No, it should be something like, the tray which was loaded with tapas was carried across the room. And you could say it a variety of ways. You could fix that a variety of ways. But you want to make sure that you don't, for example, say something like, wondering what to do next, the clock struck 12. Okay? It can be amusing. I'm glad you see the humor in that, right? The clock is not really wondering what to do next, right? Maybe you are, right? Wondering what to do next. I heard the clock strike 12, right? That would be okay. But saying wondering what to do next, the clock struck 12, that tells me grammatically that the clock is wondering what to do next, which maybe if it's Beauty and the Beast or something, that would be okay, right? Or some form of personification. Yeah, but in normal everyday language, that's a misplaced modifier, okay? So a participial phrase at the beginning of a sentence must refer to the grammatical subject.